one of the amendments in the Constitution says that, you know, there will be a separation between church and state. A lot of people are saying they want to see more church in state.
I do. I think so.
So certain parts of the Constitution, take it or leave it.
Yeah. So I believe fully in the Constitution. You know, but I still
just not that particular thing.
They need church, or we need less government in our schools and more church in our schools, I think.
More church in our state.
Christian nationalism is having quite the moment in Trump's GOP, isn't it? But it seems like some of Trump's supporters have never really stopped to think what it'd mean for the country.
Don't let anybody tell us that this is not a Christian country. It is.
Is a Jewish person going to burn in hell? Yes or no? Yes or no? You just have to answer yes or no. DeVrom's Jewish. Is he going to burn in hell?
I'm right here.
Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life.
So yes.
So which one?
You're saying yes? You're saying yes? Yes?
You're framing me.
You're saying it's a Christian nation. So everyone who is not Christian, they're basically being told they're going to burn in hell. That means that the nation that they live in believes that people that don't believe in their religion are burning in hell. That's a really big thing to say.
People are talking about making America a Christian nation. Would you support that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, the values, thought that's what we built the country on, was my impression, but obviously things got twisted along the way. It's pretty disheartening to see what's going on. So many people that are unaware of the just general challenges in life, what's going on behind the scenes on the bad side.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, conspiracy theories, tin hat guy, call it what you will. I've been in the rabbit hole deep in all directions, and over the last couple of years, I've been awake for a long time. Excuse me, but deep in the rabbit hole, verifying incidentals, looking at videos, checking backgrounds, doing homework. You have to vet everything. And I was never a real church kind of guy, but in the last couple of years, I've gotten real spiritual. In here, you have to get with yourself.
What happens to people who are not Christian in this country, who are atheists, who are Jewish, who are Islamic? If America is religious freedom and there is a sort of a mandate for Christianity in America, what happens to that?
Repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Well, what do we say to our Jewish brothers and sisters if we're saying we have a Christian nation?
I wouldn't necessarily even call it pushing Christianity, or I don't even go there. I'm like, I am what I am. So knowing that gives me my spirituality. So that's a worldwide thing. That's not Islamic. That's not Hebrew or Jewish or German or any other. It's humankind. In my book, that's kind of how things sort of seem to work, if you're paying attention.
The usual MAGA suspects keep talking about the mythical persecution of Christians in America while advocating for the very real discrimination of people who don't pray the way they do.
If there really is this separation of church and state like they believe it means, well, then what is Ilhan doing with her hijab on? I mean, why is she able to go in there with that? I mean, why aren't they shouting that from the rooftops, separation of church and state?
And this threat to democracy has made its way to Congress. I mean, my colleague, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, has said, quote, Christian nationalism is actually a good thing. It is an identity that Republicans need to embrace, and I am being attacked by the godless left because I said I am a proud Christian nationalist, end quote. My colleague, Representative Lowen Boebert, said, quote, the church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk, end quote. Junk being the Constitution and Bill of Rights. The Bible itself in 2 Corinthians actually warns us against this. Paul warned against this. He warned us against people who would preach of a Christ that differs from the true Christ that we learn about in the Bible. That's exactly what Christian nationalism is doing. I condemn religious extremism everywhere, globally and domestically, and we have to recognize the threat it poses to our most sacred freedoms and root it out everywhere. And I think it's incumbent, especially upon us as Christians, and me as a Christian, to be at the forefront of the fight to ensure that white nationalism and Christian nationalism doesn't see the light of day. Thank you, and I yield back.
White Christian nationalism fuses Christianity with a rigid view of civic life, a view that true Americans are white, native-born, and conservative. On January 6th, it was the connective tissue that tied disparate groups together and propelled them to action. It's infecting our government, from members of Congress and top officials in the previous administration to the wife of a Supreme Court justice whose messages to the president's chief of staff leading up to the insurrection smacked of white Christian nationalism. Thankfully, good Americans, people of faith and non-believers, are standing up to this violent ideology.
Obviously, Trump is using his newfound faith to court white evangelical Christians, but it's pretty gross how willing these so-called Christians are to get behind such an obviously terrible guy. A guy who has committed every sin the Bible mentions, and many it wasn't creative enough to predict. A guy who has worshipped money above all else and whose charity is limited to a handful of scams. A guy who covets like it's a reflex and covets nothing more than every woman he sees, wife or wives be damned. A guy who cares so little about Christianity that in the nearly decade that he's pretended to be a Christian, he hasn't taken the 5 minutes necessary to memorize a quote from the Bible so he can at least convincingly pretend to have read it. Despite all of this, they support him, they love him, they worship him. White Christian nationalism is how Trump won back in 2016. It's a dangerous and well-funded ideology that threatens to upend democracy and destroy the foundational separation of church and state. And while it might be ironic that its best weapon to achieving that goal is a sinful atheist like Donald Trump, at the end of the day, they might not care, because they're closer than ever to achieving their actual goals.